First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner.
He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
Mixed martial arts fans, welcome back. This is Eternal Insiders, back again with another very special guest for you today. The man hot off the heels of his knockout win over Rod Costa at Eternal 76, the reigning featherweight champion, #1 unsigned fighter in the country right now. I'm talking, of course, about Mr. Lockjaw, Justin Van Heerden. Justin, you said ahead of this fight, the plan and the prediction was you were putting Rod Costa away on June 10th, and you did just that, man. The Mystic Lockjaw era is in full effect, would you say?
I mean, I wouldn't so much call it a prediction. It's just more of a promise. Like, there was no other way I was going to leave that fight than with a finish. There was no way I was going to the judges.
Yeah, so, I mean, you avenged a loss from almost 2 years ago to the date against Rod, man. You said originally that when you had that loss, you didn't want that feeling again, and you haven't had to. Of course, going on a 5-fight win streak now, as a result of defending that title. How good does this feeling contrast?
Yeah, obviously, like you sort of touched on, it's almost 2 years to the day. So to go back to the exact same venue, go back into his hometown, go back into that same sort of environment, where you're coming in and, you're fighting like the hometown hero, and everything's sort of stacked against you. Obviously, the crowd's going to be booing and all that sort of stuff. But that's the sort of stuff I thrive on. And, like I sort of spoke about, I'm the one that kind of was putting everything on the line to go out there and, defend my belt and, take this fight on to sort of, get that loss back and then sort of get that redemption and showcase that the first time, wasn't the standard of fighter that I am and how much I've improved and grown, but also to sort of, show that, I'm better than this guy. I can beat this guy and I can put him away. And so to go out there and actually, put it into motion and then to have things sort of come to fruition like that was perfect. The perfect way to sort of wrap up the weekend.
No, an absolutely perfect way to rack up to finish off the weekend, man. I mean, the first KO of your professional career, you're on a 5-fight win streak, four finishes in your last 5 fights. But to get a KO on your record, I mean, you said to me behind closed doors that you were feeling a submission. You came out and you shocked us and you got a KO win, man. Absolutely just sort of out of nowhere, so swift. What did that feel like to get a win like that in that fashion?
Yeah, it's obviously cool to get that, that first sort of KO sort of win on the record. Like I sort of touched on, like I'm not going into the fights, being like looking for a finish, looking like I'm like where I'm on edge the whole time, looking for a finish, just trying to do that. I think some people approach it like that and whatever, and it works for some people or whatever. But I just look, go out there, implement the game plan that I have, use my skill set, and I know that if an opportunity arises or there's a sort of moment presented for me to finish the fight, it doesn't matter where it is, and I've said that. It doesn't matter if I'm on my back, if I'm on top, if it's on the feet, if it's in the grappling. Like, I'm gonna, if the opportunity's there to finish the fight, I'll finish the fight. Like, that's what I do, and that comes back to the coaching that I have, the training partners that I have, my own sort of evolution as a fighter, and then my fight IQ as a fighter as well. Like, the opportunity is going to be there for me to sort of get the win and then finish the fight. I'll take it. So, but yeah, 100%. This has been, this win, especially to do it like that, it was pretty cool. I really did want a submission just because of his credentials as a grappler and the sort of caliber of a fighter he is in that area. I wanted to it would have been really cool to sort of do that. And just for my own selfish reasons, it would have just, felt cool to rub a bit of salt in the wound as well with a submission victory. But to go out there and land that shot and then knock him out like that and then sort of do it the same way that I kind of lost to him in the first fight, maybe even do it that little bit worse because he was out cold, it was so cool. So I couldn't be happier.
No, he was definitely out cold. I mean, look, all the respect in the world to Rod Costa. I mean, you two guys, two of the most popular fighters that we have on the scene at the moment. I was seeing some talk online that people thought, I don't know if they were joking, but they were saying early stoppage, but Rod was out, man. I mean, you would have seen it firsthand. I mean, his eyes went to the back of his head. Like, that was a good stoppage.
Yeah, so obviously I said this to him in the cage. He's one of the few fighters in the country that I actually respect because, he shows up and, he shows up and he fights anyone in front of him, and he's just out there getting after it, and not trying to sit on stuff, not trying to avoid people. It's like they make that call, and he's like, "Yep, let's go." So I have a lot of respect for him as a competitor and stuff like that. There's no ill will with me. Even after I lost to him, it was never like I was sitting there going like, "Oh, I hate this dude," or looking for reasons to dislike the dude. Like him and I. Well, since that fight over the years, like we've constantly gone back and forth and talked to each other online, and kept in touch, and it's been like respectful and cool. It's never been anything weird behind it. But yeah, 100%. Like, Eternal put up a thing today too of like the cage side angle of where you can see those shots landing, and from my money, like when I landed the shot that put him down, I kind of paused for a second because I was trying to see, like, because of the way he went down, I was like, looking at, and I could see the ref in the corner of my eye, and I was like, is he still gonna step in? And he didn't sort of move forward, so that's when I obviously, that's when I got to go do my job some more and land those extra shots. But I'm so present in there. This is my 17th fight. Like, obviously, this is a dangerous game that we play, and it's the fight game, and it's ruthless. But if I don't have to give anyone any unnecessary damage, I'm not gonna. But I obviously had some more work to do, and that's why I followed up. That second shot, man, that put him out completely, because like as soon as I landed that, I saw his head fly back and his eyes roll back, and then I think the third shot actually kind of like woke him up, and that's why I think there was, even if you sort of watch it back, you can see him sitting up and being like, what, like,
yeah,
thinking that like he's like, oh, I'm fine, but like didn't actually, maybe he didn't sort of realize that he went out and then came back. But those shots were hard. Like I can promise you, I like my knuckle connected through the glove on his head, and it was very hard. Like it wasn't one of those things where it's like a glancing shot and you don't even feel it land. Like I felt the full force of those punches land. So yeah. So it was definitely a good stoppage, and I'm happy I didn't have to follow up with more shots once the ref decided to grab a hold of me.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, man, from that angle, and I think I saw it live in sort of real time and from the replay as well. You put him down with that first shot. The second one that you gave him on the ground, that's when his eyes went to the back of his head. And that third one you kind of gave him, sort of woke him up again. But I mean, he was definitely out. It was an incredibly hard shot, man. And you absolutely did your job. You did what you had to do. I actually saw something on Instagram today, which was quite interesting. I don't know who it was, but just an Instagram talking point about, and I don't know what it's like because I've never been in the cage, but they say, ironically, that the shots you don't feel sometimes are the ones that land the cleanest, like the ones that put the guys away. It feels like you're just cutting through the air. And in contrast, the ones that hurt your hands the most are the ones that don't connect as well. Did you have that sort of similar feeling when you connected with him? Like, did you feel any kind of way, or did it just feel like the perfect shot and like you were cutting through him like butter?
Yeah, like when I landed that shot, like the shot that dropped him was just like I felt the impact, and I was like, I knew as soon as it landed, I was like, oh yeah, like
almost like when you hit the golf ball just perfect, right? You hit it, you feel it, but you don't feel it. Like you're not hurting your wrist, you feel it good.
It's like you just know, and you just know that it was just like it was just on that sweet spot, right on the chin, and then that was all she wrote.
Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the game plan. I mean, you started the fight, you came out with a lot of movement, a lot of stance switching, you're sort of working behind that jab, the teep kicks. All that sort of movement was sort of very reminiscent of a very very famous guy that you train with. Now, the game plan that you came in with Joe Lopez, was that the plan to sort of keep that sort of movement going, the stance switching, that sort of thing? Because in my eyes, you look different to some of your fights gone by in the way that you approach this fight.
Yeah, it was obviously, I knew playing with Joe, kind of, Joe's obviously his knowledge for the game and knowledge for fights and sort of game planning and stuff like that, second to none. So he basically said to me, he's like, the constant movement, not standing in front, not standing still and just standing inside a boxing range and giving this dude an opportunity to throw punches, that's going to like puzzle him immensely. Like the constant movement, the constant feints, the fan switches, those front kicks up the middle, all that stuff's going to just like puzzle him. And because Rod has his hands high and kind of walks in forward, and he kind of tries to draw out some punches to either shoot or he wants to be in the pocket. He wants to be in the pocket, and he wants to throw heavy shots and throw like that big left hook that he's got. So, if you're just going to stand in front of him or just go backwards in a straight line, like that's going to play perfect into him. If you're just kind of letting him sort of creep into that range. So we knew that just my movement and my stance switches, even that was going to be enough to just puzzle him and kind of like, put him in an uncomfortable sort of place to not know what to not know what to do and not know how to sort of, find the effective way to use his skills and do what he wants to do. And then you throw in, the punches that I was landing, the kicks, throwing the kicks up the middle. It was just all of that's just overloading his brain. And I could tell he was puzzled. I could tell he was puzzled in there. And, obviously I could hear his corner yelling out during that first round, especially. And they were like, everything that I was kind of doing to him, they were trying to trying to get him to get going. And then at the end of the round, I heard Ben Vickers say to him, like, let's shoot, Rod, let's put him on his back. Let's give him something else to think about. But, I just think like, unless I was like with my back on the fence or anything like that, the task of him shooting on me, just trying to wrestle with me, like obviously in the grappling side of things, right? If we hit the floor and then, we're in that sort of setting, he's going to, he's someone that you're going to have to watch out for. He's very strong. He's got very good grips. He's obviously his knowledge and his skill set as a grappler is high level. So, that would have been a different sort of ball game where you'd have to, be a bit more cautious and a bit more sort of aware. But to get to that point to wrestle with me, that was going to be a tough task. Like I think I'm a vastly better wrestler than him. So I don't think that shooting was something that he was going to try and do unless it was off me getting, lazy with my range and overcommitting or something like that. So I heard them saying that in the first round, but I just knew that he was puzzled. I could see it on his face, and I could kind of a good tell to know that someone's kind of stuck and not, with what to do is when I would then sort of do something, he would try and do the same thing back straight away. So I would throw a leg kick. He would try and throw a leg kick straight away. And I was like, oh, like he's stuck. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to cope with what's happening. Then, so we went to the second round, and in between rounds, I said to Joe, I was like, I think he's going to try and start grappling. And you've seen in his previous fights, he'll shoot a takedown. And if it's a missed takedown or a missed shot, he'll just grab a leg and try and tangle you up that way. So I kind of was like to Joe, I think he's going to start looking to do that. And Joe said to me, he's like, just don't stand in front of him. He, the first round, all he landed was a jab. And it was at one point when I stopped moving for half a second and he landed a jab. So Joe was like, just keep up what we're doing. Keep puzzling him, keep moving, keep working. He's going to come out, try to be maybe a bit more aggressive, which you kind of saw there. He's trying to, walk forward a bit more and try to press me a bit more and be a bit more aggressive. But we just kind of knew if I kept up what I was doing, I was just going to keep sort of giving him those hurdles, giving him those roadblocks. And then, and then the next sort of layer on top of that was going to be me starting to actually utilize the wrestling and give him another threat and another sort of problem to solve. So I think, the fight was sort of playing out how I expected it to, and just, knowing that if I just stick to the game plan, I'm eventually going to find an opening. I'm going to find something and I'm going to get this guy out of there.
I mean, to that point, you're talking about the grappling and Rod's corner calling for the grappling. The commentators actually said during the fight that you weren't necessarily looking for the grappling because, you be aware of Rod's credentials as far as the grappling game goes on the ground, that sort of thing. But I think ditto for Rod, right? Like he wasn't sort of looking for that stuff early in that round because you two are, pretty much the two best grapplers that we have in the country right now. I mean, it was sort of like almost an Australian version of sort of, Usman Colby type thing in which you guys know how good you are in terms of the grappling side of things. It largely became a stand-up match, for as long as it lasted, kind of like the original fight. It really was kind of like that sort of mini version of Usman Colby where you guys were sort of just going at it until it ended.
Yeah, it was, I heard them, like when I watched it back, I was obviously heard to some of the stuff they were saying on the commentary and I couldn't help but laugh, but it is what it is. Some people, I guess, are just uneducated when it comes to stuff in the sport, but you can't help that. But like the play, I said going into the fight, like this fight's going to take place everywhere, and I'm going to be more than willing to engage with him everywhere. And coming out before that second round, Joe said to me, he said, now I want you to add in the wrestling as well and give him those looks to worry about as well, because now you're worrying about movement. Now you're worrying about stance switches. Now you're worrying about, I'm attacking your legs, I'm attacking your body, I'm attacking you up high, I'm throwing punches, I'm throwing combinations. And now you got to worry about level changes as well. And it's just another thing to utilize my full skill set. I understand looking at on paper with him, the submission finishes that I have and stuff like that. And if you look at some of my other fights, I can understand, people keep sort of billing me up as a wrestler and a grappler, but like I train at the best gym in the world, under the best coach in the world, with the best training partners in the world. And I'm a well-rounded mixed martial artist, and I'm constantly working to improve in every area because you need to. That's especially when we're talking about the next level, like you need to do that. So yeah, I'm just gonna, continue to do that. And that played out on the weekend. It showcased that I have a well-rounded skill set, and, it doesn't matter where the fight's taking place, I'm going to be dangerous.
No, and you've showed that over your last 5 fights, man, and especially, coming into this one, getting that KO win on your record, amongst an absolute litany of submission finishes. Anyone that doesn't think you're a well-rounded fighter doesn't know what they're talking about. And just talking about the commentary team too, what we were sort of talking about there, one of the things that they also said that sort of interested me is they said that, Rod's ability to sort of roll with the shots was something that he'd likely picked up from working with Jack Della Maddalena. But I mean, in contrast, you're working with the UFC featherweight champion of the world. You're working with Joe Lopez. You've talked about your striking game and, how that's sort of gelling with your grappling game, how sort of far you've come over the years. Can you talk a little bit about that growth in your game outside of the grappling into the striking? Who's been the main influence in terms of where you're at today, with that sort of poise and the well-versed nature that you have with your striking game to complement your grappling that you have now?
Yeah, it's just like pretty much just been the product of all the time and effort that Joe puts into coaching me and breaking things down and making sure that I'm, picking things up, evolving, and in these camps, continuing to work on these areas. And it's not like because I'm a wrestler, I showed up to freestyle and I had good wrestling and good grappling, and I don't train those areas. Like I said, we train everything and we're working constantly. But like, especially with the striking, like Joe's really helped me develop immensely in that area as well, and then kind of given me all the sort of tools to sort of improve those skills to make myself more dangerous in that area. And obviously, Alex is branching off of that as well, because he's obviously one of my training partners and helps coach me as well. And he's also, giving me sort of tips and tricks when I'm asking for things or breaking things down as well. So, it's kind of like, Joe's the mastermind and architect behind it. And then, Volk's helping to like sprinkle in a few extra sort of bits and pieces of knowledge that he has as well. And then it just kind of comes together, and all of that coinciding with the training partners that I have, the people I'm sharing the mats with, and trying to implement these things. Because it's one thing to learn something, but now you got to start trying to implement it in your game. And, the caliber of people that I'm sharing the mats with, like, these people are dangerous and they're talented, and, you can't it's not like I'm just going to go out there and be able to sort of have my way with people. Like I often talk about, like most of the time at freestyle, when I'm in that gym and on those mats, like I'm the nail. So, it's one thing to learn all these cool things in the striking and grappling and wrestling and develop all these skills, but it's another thing to try and implement it and then do it against high level partners that I have, like the type of people that I have there. So that sort of is what adds up to me making these improvements. But it's the coaching, the actual knowledge and time invested into me from Joe, and then actually trying to like implement those skills against like high level training partners that I have, like, that I share the mats with.
No, I mean, the old saying goes, iron sharpens iron, right? Shout out Freestyle MMA, the coaches, the training partners that you guys have there. Obviously, Blake Donnelly was sharing the card with you. Didn't go his way, unfortunately, for Blake. But, we know what Blake's like. He's still very young in the game. We know he's going to be back. Must have been very cool for you guys to be able to train together in the lead up to that fight. Looking forward to seeing what Blake does next. And anyone out of that gym, obviously we've got Alex, doing his thing coming up as well. So a lot of cool things for Freestyle MMA, and just great for Australian MMA as a whole, the way you guys are representing the country. Sort of similar to what sort of City Kickboxing is doing for New Zealand. Freestyle MMA is doing very much a similar thing for Australian MMA. So absolute shout out to you guys there. Now, in terms of options going forward, I know Blake Richardson sort of touched on the options that you might sort of have going forward, and you're sort of fairly coy on what you might want to do. I know you like to sort of play things close to the chest. Called out Abdallah Bayeda as a potential opponent. Got Eternal 78 coming up on the eve of UFC 293 for that big Sydney card as well. Dana White's Contender Series is always an option there. You've said in the past that the biggest advice that Alexander Volkanovski always gave you was to make yourself undeniable. You've more than made yourself undeniable, man. I mean, the world's your oyster. And you also said after the fight, you've beat the best in the country. Maybe it's time to start testing yourself against the best in the world. What do you want to see next in a perfect world? Where do we go from here, man?
Yeah, obviously, for me moving forward, you know, I want to be on that. I want to be on that Sydney card. I want to be. Well, it could be any card, but it'd be amazing. Like in a perfect world, I'd want to make my UFC debut right here in Australia on that Sydney card, alongside these other incredible sort of Anzac athletes. That's my ideal focus of what I would like to happen next. And like you sort of touched on, if for some reason that doesn't come to fruition, like I'm not going to just sit around. I'm gonna fight again, and I'm gonna book a fight. So, it's logical that Abdallah Bayeda would be the next fight, or the next person that would be in line to fight for the belt. I did see that they announced a fight for him as well in July.
Got cancelled.
Well. I then did that's what I was about to say, and then I heard got cancelled.
Curious to know if you knew anything about that, about what sort of I'd spoken to Cam sort of briefly about it, but apparently it's not happening anymore. I wasn't aware of that when you actually called him out to start with. So at this stage, Abdallah Bayeda has no opponent.
Yeah. So obviously, as a fingers the focus is going to be on that. I want to be in the UFC. Like I said, I beat the top guys in the country. I mean, I went pro in 2017. I've had 17 fights since. I've been active every year that I've been fighting. And outside of the 3 fights that I took that were out of my weight class as a featherweight, I have an 11-3 record, and I've avenged 2 of my losses back to back in title fights on the best promotion in the country. Like you said, I'm on a 5-fight win streak with 4 finishes. So, in my opinion, I tick the boxes. I'm active. I don't say no to fights. I don't say no to any challenges, and I put people away. And that's, all things that people want to see. They want to see people that show up and fight, that want to fight often, and then that, put on exciting fights and finish fights. That's so, I feel like I'm in a good spot, then that's going to be my focus. But also, like I sort of touched on, if, that doesn't come to fruition, and I'm not going to just sit around on my record, or sit around on what I've accomplished up until this point and try and wait for something to happen. I'm just going to stay active and keep going, because that's what you got to do. You just got to keep fighting. There's always more fights to have. So, that's why I kind of was like, it'd be logical for me to defend my belt if that doesn't come to fruition. But that's going to be my focus moving forward.
No, I mean, like we said, plenty of options going forward there, man. Whether you turn up for UFC 293 on that Sydney card or Eternal 78 the night before, I mean, if that was the case and you were there defending your title before that, I mean, it'd be very sort of Steven Erceg-like, right? Because he had that fight defending his title for, back at Eternal before the Perth card there. So, if that was your audition to sort of get yourself into the UFC, what a perfect sort of way to do it. It's always a great thing when we have, these cards coming up, mixed martial arts, both at a regional level and a professional level, mixing Eternal MMA, the best promotion in the country, right before UFC. I mean, absolutely incredible events we got coming up. So whatever comes next for you, man, I absolutely can't wait. You're one of the best fighters. You're the number 1 unsigned fighter in Australia right now. Whatever you choose to do next, I know that's why you'll love that, you're going to jump in there with anyone at any time. So whatever you do, absolutely can't wait for it, man. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the pod. Always an absolute pleasure having you here. Always very insightful, whether you're talking about yourself or anything else in terms of mixed martial arts in Australia. So thanks, my man, and we'll see you in the next one. Absolutely looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's always appreciated.
You're the man, brother. Thank you.